iOS 17 brought the biggest update to maps in SwiftUI since they were introduced in iOS 14. And in today's video, I'm going to show you how to build maps using these latest and greatest APIs. Of course, we'll create the map, get it on the screen. We'll talk about markers and annotations. We'll get the user's location, put that on the map. We'll talk about different map styles and elevations, map controls, and the all-new look-around view, which is really cool. And then finally, we'll put lines on the map for directions from one point to another. Today's video is sponsored by WishKit. All right, here I am, brand new Xcode SwiftUI project. I have done nothing. This is the default hello world that you get. Like I said, all this stuff was introduced in iOS 17 with maps. So make sure you go to your project, look at that minimum deployment target. Mine's 18.2. Just make sure yours is iOS 17 and above. If you need to support iOS 16 and below, you have to look for some older MapKit videos because this is going to be iOS 17 and beyond. All right, back to the content view. The first thing we need to do is import MapKit. That makes sense, right? And let's get rid of this VStack here and just type map and initialize it. And we'll get a basic map on the screen that we can, scroll around, zoom around. Great, a map is on the screen, but obviously that's not very helpful. Let's build out this map with the new features. So instead of just an empty initializer, right, we'll get some autocomplete here. And let's zoom in on this because there's a couple different ways to initialize a map. And as you can see down here, here are the deprecated ones. So if you're dealing with an old project, or maybe you're seeing an older tutorial and you see these initializers, those are deprecated. In iOS 17 and beyond, we use these other initializers. What we're going to use is an initial position and content. Now you see there's bounds, interaction mode, scope. So bounds is the bounds of the map, which we're going to cover with our camera. And interaction modes is like pan, zoom, all the gestures that you can use. You can limit those if you want. We're going to keep the default. So to keep it simple for now, initial position and content. But look at initial position. This is new in iOS 17. Map, camera, position. Like that wasn't a thing before. So let's talk about that. And this is similar to regions that we used to have to use. So let's say let camera position, and let's ignore the autocomplete because we want to type it out. Map camera position equals dot region, and you can see the region takes in an MK coordinate region. See in the autocomplete, let's not do that. Let's just do this on our own. So we'll do dot init because we need to init a region. So you see, region has a center, which is a CL location coordinate 2D. So that's a latitude and a longitude, which we'll pass in. And then you can do a span, which is kind of the same thing as latitudinal and longitudinal meters, where this is how zoomed in you want your map to be, right? If you look at the map in the preview, that's pretty far zoomed out, right? You see all of the United States. Whereas the map we're going to use, as you see, is a lot more zoomed in. So that's where you define this. So let's do center in latitudinal and longitudinal meters. So the center is a coordinate. So again, we'll do init, and that is just latitude and longitude. And for Apple HQ, that is 37.3346. And then a longitude of negative 122.0090. And no, I do not have that memorized. I looked off screen. But that is the latitude and longitude of Apple HQ. You can go to Google Maps, right click, get the lat and long. There's other websites where you can get latitude and longitude. But once we have our coordinate there, again, latitudinal meters, longitudinal meters, this is basically how zoomed in you want to be. Now I played around with these numbers. I'll show you once we get it on the map, the difference here. We're gonna do 1300 by 1300. So now that we have our camera position here, I can use that camera position. And real quick, I just made this a let on the view. If you were building the type of app where you want the map to move like with the user's location, like picture Apple Maps as you're driving, right? The camera on the map is moving with your car. Then this would be a state variable because this is going to need to update in real time and update the UI as the user moves. So your map camera is going to be moving and updating. For our example, it is a stationary camera right above Apple HQ. That is why I made it a let. Again, if this needs to be dynamic, whether it's driving or maybe it's a hiking app, then you would want to make this a state variable. So we have our map with the initial position. Again, that's our camera, and then content. You see it is map content. This is a new thing in iOS 17 as well. Basically what this means, similar to Swift charts, if you use that where you do charts, open curly brace, close curly brace, and then only chart stuff can go in there, you can't put other stuff. Same concept, only map stuff can go in here. So what is map stuff? Well, let's start with a basic marker. We're gonna talk about markers and annotations, but let's get a basic marker in there so our preview will update and we can see our camera that we just created. So a marker, if we type that out here, there's a couple different ways to initialize this with a MK map item, a title, coordinate, label. We're gonna do title, system image, coordinate. Now this is the default balloon that you get on Apple Maps. So I'm gonna hit return on there. So title, we're gonna say Apple Visitor Center. And then the system image is just laptop computer. This is an SF symbol. I've looked that up off screen. You can put whatever SF symbol you want in here. And then coordinate. Now to make this look pretty, so we don't have to do init, center, all this stuff, I'm going to write an extension here. Extension on CL location coordinate 2D. That way, anytime I need a coordinate, I can just do dot Apple HQ, dot Apple Visitor Center dot whatever. This is more for convenience and making your syntax look nice. And I'm actually going to copy and paste these in because it is a lot of just boilerplate. You can see static let Apple HQ. You initialize a CL location coordinate 2D with the latitude and longitude. Apple Visitor Center, initialize a coordinate with the latitude and longitude, right? So you can pause the video, stop, look at these coordinates, type that in if you're following along. But again, I want to save some time because I think this video is going to be long enough as it is. But the reason I have an extension on CL location coordinate 2D is now anytime I need a coordinate, I can just do dot Apple Visitor Center, and it looks really nice. So what you're going to see now on our map is, boom, there's Apple Visitor Center right next to Apple HQ. Now what you're seeing in the preview is the camera, right? The 1300 by 1300 window that we gave it. That's about how zoomed in it's going to be. Let's say let's add a 0 in there. 13,000 by 13,000, that's probably gonna be really zoomed in. Or no, I'm sorry, zoomed out. My bad. So see how far zoomed out we are? Add another 0. Another 0, we're probably gonna see a lot of California. Yeah, there you go. So you can see by playing with these numbers, that's how zoomed in and zoomed out you are for your map. All right, so back to where we were. That's about the zoom I'm looking for my feature. Again, that's gonna differ depending on what kind of map app you're building. And like I said, with the default marker, you get the typical Apple Maps balloon button if you're going for that default look. However, markers have some limitations, right? You get the default. You don't get a lot of the customizability, which that brings us to annotations. But first, let me add another marker because I wanna talk about the bounds of a map. So let's add another marker here. I'm just gonna copy and paste. And by the way, this does kind of act like a Z stack, this map. So anything below will be on top if you have them in the same location. So we'll say this is Panama Park. This is a park that's slightly off our map that you'll see here. I'm just gonna do tree.fill, again, just an SF symbol. Instead of coordinate, I'm gonna do Panama Park. Now, my preview updates, I don't see a park. I see Rainer Park up there. I don't see Panama Park. Well, let's scroll over a little bit because it's right there. It's red. I also wanna do .tint .green. So like I said, the default markers, you can customize them a little bit, like with the tint. There you go, there's tint green, Panama Park, right there. And the tint color and the SF symbol. That's about all the customization you can do with the default marker. But let me change something so it goes back to like what I had it on the default map. Okay, so the default map, right, with 1300, that's my view window. Panama Park is not encapsulated. Well, if you don't give the map an initial position, by default, so I'm gonna delete my initial position and go back to that basic map initializer. By default, the bounds of the map is going to encapsulate all of the markers, right? So you see it zoomed out a little bit to make sure Panama Park and Apple Visitor Center was in there. Now let's have some fun. Let's move Panama Park to 112. See where that puts us. So you're gonna see that's gonna put us over in Utah somewhere. But you see the bounds of the map zoomed out far enough to make sure it encapsulated all of our markers. So keep that in mind depending on what type of app you're building. If you want your initial view to show all of your markers no matter where they are, this is what you would want. If you want your map to be specific, like right above Apple HQ, then do what we've done. So I'm gonna Command Z to go back to the proper latitude and longitude, another Command Z, and what that does, that gives me my initial position back that we defined up here, which again is right above Apple HQ. Okay, so that is basic markers. Like I said, you're pretty limited. You can't add like tap targets or context menus like we're about to do in a little bit. There is a way using the selection parameter on the map to have your map markers selectable. A lot of the stuff I'm gonna kind of mention and point you in the right direction, but it's too much to go through in like one video to go down all these threads and rabbit holes. And you're gonna see more of those as the video goes on. But I find it's easier to have selection, and I like the ability to customize my markers a little bit more, which again brings us to annotations. So if you do annotation, do title key, coordinate, anchor, and content. So title key, let's say Apple Visitor Center, and then the coordinate, again, we just got Apple Visitor Center. Now you see the convenience of that extension. Then for the anchor, we'll do .center for now, but we'll come back to that. And then the content. Now this is where you can just make whatever view you want. For example, in my older SwiftUI Maps course, WWDC, here's the custom annotation that we made. It's like a nice little map pin, and it actually has an image of the restaurant in there. So again, you can go crazy with your custom marker here. But for us, let's just build a simple circle. So I'm gonna comment out our markers so we don't get confused here. I'm gonna do an image with the system name, laptop computer, just like we did before, and that is resizable. And again, this is any SwiftUI view you want. I'm just choosing to do an image. We'll do content.aspect ratio.fit, foreground style.white, frame of 20 by 20, padding of 7. Again, this is me just dialing in to get the look that I wanted. I don't just know this all off the top of my head. Say .background, .pink in, do a .circle. Pink.gradient, give it a little gradient look there. So there's our little makeshift circle marker, similar to the balloon, but like I said, this is a SwiftUI view. Go nuts, make it whatever you want it to be. So I'm gonna copy and paste this because we're going to use these annotations later when I do the look around in the map directions. We're going to add a context menu so you can tap these and show options here. Whoops, I put this in the actual annotation. That's not what I want. Let's delete that. We want to copy the entire annotation. And then now this is Panama Park, coordinate again, dot Panama Park. Okay, now this anchor is the center. You might want to do dot bottom because that'll kind of center the title and the annotation view that we used. But again, whatever anchor you need, right? You can manipulate your custom view to be anchored wherever you need it to be. This is not a laptop computer. This is tree.fill. And then the background color is .green .gradient circle. And we see Panama Park right there. I'll zoom in a little bit. Okay, now of course, if you have your custom annotation, you probably don't want to define it every time. You're going to extract this into its own SwiftUI view. In this tutorial, I'm going to leave stuff spelled out, if you will. I find that easier to understand when you're learning rather than trying to follow all the refactoring and everything. So just know, yes, this should be refactored out. And by the way, if you're liking my teaching style, the way I explain things, the way I present, I have more Swift and SwiftUI courses at seanallen.teachable.com. We go much deeper and in-depth there. A lot of my courses are like 50, 60 videos long. So if you want to go deeper, check that out. So that wraps up markers and annotations. Let's move on to putting the user location on the map. So we'll go below our Panama Park annotation. And there is a nice little convenience thing new in iOS 17, just user annotation. Creates an annotation that displays the person's current location. Great. Where is it? As you probably know, Apple is very big on privacy. You can't just get the user's location without asking them. So now we have to do some privacy stuff and request permission to get the user's location before it will show up on the map. So the first part of that is in our project, go to the info.plist and we need to add something to our plist here. Say privacy to get all the privacy things. And then I'll scroll down a little bit. You should see location when in use. Location, right, there's a bunch of different ones. Temporary usage, when in use, always. You know, this is obviously dependent on what you're using the location for, what type of one you need, but I think the vast majority of apps that use maps are gonna only want the location when the app is in use, right? If the app is closed or in the background, most likely you're not gonna need the location. I'm sure there's some apps that do. So hit return, and then here in the string next to it, this is where you give the reason why you need location. We need the location to show it on the map. Of course, in your app, you know, you will say something that makes the user feel good about giving their location and like, oh yeah, that's a very good reason, right? Don't be like, we need your location so we can target ads for you. Like definitely don't do that. But you know, give them a good reason because this is what they're going to see on the permission prompt, which you'll see here in a second. So we said, we need the location to show it on the map. So that's what it's going to say. Now back to our content view here. In order to request location, we need a location manager. And more on this in a second. So I'm going to say let location manager equal CL location manager. This is the built-in object into iOS that keeps track of the user's location. So now that we have a location manager, down here in on appear on the map, I think this is the map here, dot on appear, we can say location manager dot request when in use authorizations. This will show up the permission prompt you see here on appear. So let's actually run it on the simulator here. And you'll see like the first time the app pops up, boom, our user gets hit with this, right? You've probably opened up apps where you get hit with these. You don't want to do that. I'm showing you like the mechanics of how to show this, but where you show it is dependent on your app. Maybe it's during the onboarding flow when you're explaining what your app does and be like, hey, we are a hiking app and we need to show your location on the map. And they hit okay, now show this, right? Now they're more likely to say, yeah, okay, that's great. Don't just bombard them with that. But again, that depends on what your app is doing. So I'm just showing you the mechanics of how to show it. Where you show it is up to you. But again, you see allow once, allow while using the app. We'll say allow while using the app. And there you see up there, that blue dot, our location. Now, if you haven't set this on your simulator, yours isn't going to show up. So with your simulator selected, go to features, location, custom location. And let me move this over here. All right, I'll zoom in on that, pause the video. That's the one I found. Again, I just went to like lat long locator on the internet, dropped the pin there, it gave me the lat and long, and then I just pasted it into my simulator. That's all I did there. So if you want to do that, go do that. Or if you just want to copy what I have, pause the video, there it is. Okay, so now the location is on the map. I don't know why I just went gray. Maybe because I changed location. I don't know, let's start that over. I didn't think I changed anything. The reason I'm concerned about the color is because I'm about to show you how to change it. So on your map, you actually have a tint property. So you can do .tint, we'll say .pink, right? Just so it's drastically different and we know. Run it on the simulator. There it is, there's a location up there and now it is pink. So now This tint is gonna apply to everything on your map, like map controls, which we're gonna talk about in a second, but I wanna pause real quick on this location stuff, because again, I'm showing the simple example of, hey, we just need to show the user's location on the map. If you were building like a navigation app where the map needs to follow the user as they move, or maybe it's a hiking app where you want the app to track all the locations through history, like as the user's on a hike. You want to map the path that they hiked on a map, that kind of stuff. Well, now you're going to need a probably more in-depth location manager where you get the user's location, especially if you need it on like multiple views, multiple screens. Like this is limited to this screen. So again, I just want to acknowledge that I'm giving the simple example and kind of point you in the right direction. Like for example, I go in depth on building a location manager in this video here, which I'll link into the description. But for this simple example, this will show the user's location on the map. And when you're building a real app, you'll need to let the user know like, hey, I don't have your permission, or you made this restricted. And that's where this documentation comes in. You usually want to check for which level of authorization you have. Again, that way you can show an error message or make the app do different things if you have location permission or if you don't. So again, wanted to point you in the right direction there. But I mentioned map controls a little bit ago. Let's talk about implementing those now, because those are actually pretty straightforward. So if we scroll down to all of our modifiers here, map controls is just a map controls modifier. Again, the default version of them. Let me explain. Actually, let me implement them, and then I'll explain what I mean by default version of them. So map controls, only certain things can go in here. Map user location button. This is the button that will center the map on the user's location. So if you're scrolling around the map and you want to go back to where the user location is, that's what this button will do. And then map compass, map pitch toggle, and map scale view. So now in our preview over here, let's refresh it. You're gonna see these pop up. Say allow while using the app. Okay, so you see in the upper right, there's the map controls. Let me move the map, and then I'm gonna hit the user location button. Boom, it goes down to the user location, which is right in Apple Park. Yep, move it around, right in Apple Park. And then you see we got 3D, 2D. See how I kind of tilted a little bit to the more 3D than 2D? That's the pitch toggle. Now you didn't see the compass in the scale view. So the compass only happens, well, it popped up now, but the compass only happens like if you're rotating it, right? You see the compass appear, right? And then see the map scale as I'm zooming in the upper left, there's the map scale. Those are not permanently on the screen. They're only on the screen like while you're manipulating it. I guess the compass is staying there. Maybe it's a preview thing, but it's usually only on the screen when you're like moving it around. Now, for default map controls, which I recommend mostly like the location of them because that's what users are used to when they're using an app, like following Apple's standard. However, if you do need to put these map controls in another location based on your UI and your design, that is possible. I'll link to it in the description. Again, can't go down all these threads, all these rabbit holes without making a 3-hour video. So point you in the right direction with links and stuff. But basic map controls, which I think 90% of apps are gonna use, there you go, pretty simple modifier. Now for a fun one, let's talk map style. So .map style, and then the value here, we can get a few different ones. Hybrid, imagery, standard, imagery elevation. So hybrid, let's just try that, see what we get here. Okay, that's what hybrid looks like. Now let's do, well, standard is what we've been working with. Obviously that's the default, there you go, that's standard. Now if we do imagery, we basically get just the satellite image. Now hybrid, if you noticed, had the things on the map, right? Bowling lanes, Hilton Garden Inns, like parking, all that stuff. Now what's cool, if we do, we'll do hybrid, hybrid with elevation. So you see points of interest, shows traffic. So again, all those traffic lines that you're probably used to seeing on Apple Maps, that's a simple Boolean that you pass in. But let's mess with elevation real quick, because this is pretty cool. Elevation is .realistic. So now if you hold Option and Shift, you can take the elevation down. Now if you zoom in, you can get it to be like pretty cool. So hold Option and Shift. So this is what the elevation allows you to do for these nice looking 3D maps. So if you want this kind of thing in your app, make sure you do the map style with an elevation. And it doesn't have to be this realistic view. You can have fun in the standard view because that also has an elevation. So let's zoom in a bit and then hold Option Shift to give us some nice elevation in the standard view. There you go, that's fun, right? So this is a pretty cool map style and you get it pretty easily with this map style modifier. And again, you can also leave this up to the user, right? You see I'm just passing in, standard, hybrid, whatever. You can attach that to a state variable, which is then attached to a segmented control, so the user can select between, do I want a realistic map? Do I want a standard map? Like, what do I want? Give the user some options. Again, that's another one of those rabbit holes I'm not gonna go down, but pointing you in the right direction. Before we get into the really cool look around view and putting directions on the map, like if you're building an app, getting feature requests from your users is so valuable. And to be honest with you, most users aren't gonna send you an email to give you some feedback. Like some are, but wouldn't it be cool if there was a way to just have this really easily built into the app where users can be like, hey, I want this feature, or they can upvote an existing feature request like, yeah, I want that too. Well, that brings me to today's sponsor, WishKit. You can drop in the WishKit SDK with only a couple lines of code, and you get a completely built and customizable view that allows your users to create new feature requests and, like I said, upvote existing new ones. I just implemented it myself in Creator View recently, like that's what you're seeing right here. I'm loving it so far. You get access to this backend dashboard where you can see and manage your new feature requests. It's like a nice Kanban view. You can see like, yeah, this is in review, this is in progress, this is completed. And your users will see that too, as you see here in this screenshot. So they are constantly updated on like what the progress is on this feature that they requested. Now the dashboard you're seeing is pretty light because this is actually my implementation in Creator View. Creator View doesn't have a ton of users. I put it in my settings screen, so not a lot of action yet, but you can see the analytics of the users viewing it. Again, you see mine, not a lot of action, but I'm looking forward to seeing this grow over time. Again, I just put it into my app. Now I've interacted with Martin, the creator of WishKit, for years on Twitter and watched him build this in public. So I'm a happy user of WishKit, and I was happy to work with him on sponsoring this video. There's a free tier, so you can check it out at no cost. Give it a try. I bet you're gonna like it. Link is in the description. All right, let's finish up by implementing look around view and adding direction lines onto our map. So the first thing we need to talk about is how are we triggering the look around view or adding directions? Of course, this is gonna be unique to your app and your UI and what you're trying to do. Find the UI that works best for you. I'm going to add a context menu onto our image. So if I recenter here on the user's location, and zoom out a little bit. So we can't do it yet, but when you tap and hold on Visitor Center, we'll see a context menu and it'll say look around view or get directions. Now, quick note on these context menus like that, they're usually not very discoverable. You typically don't want to bury essential functionality behind a context menu because most users won't discover it. Typically for power users, I'm just going to use it here because I kind of like it, but if you wanted to just do it on tap gesture and pull up a sheet and give the user some options, what they can do with the location, there's many ways to go about this. So how you trigger it is up to you. The important part is actually showing the look around view and putting the directions on the screen. So let's add a context menu to our images here. .context menu, and the first button will be title key system image action. So the title key will be open look around, and then that's going to be binoculars. Again, that is just an SF symbol, and then the action we'll leave open for now. We'll do that. Let's create the other button here, which is going to be get directions. So get directions. And then this system image is a little longer. It is arrow.turn.down.right. So what you're going to see here, I'm going to copy and paste this onto the Panama part 2. So both of our annotations have it. Again, like I said, you would want to abstract this out into your annotation view. That way you don't have to do that. Of course, you'd have to pass in the color, pass in the coordinate that we'll use here, but again, reusable views are nice. So let's run this on the simulator to see our context menu in action. For some reason, my preview wasn't working. I thought context menus worked on preview. Anyway, tap and hold, Apple Visitor Center. There's the context menu, open look around, get direction. So of course they do nothing now. We got to implement that functionality. But like I said, however you want to trigger them to open look around or get directions, that is up to you. So to get a look around view, we need a look around scene. And it's actually pretty simple. It's built into a sheet, like if you're familiar with SwiftUI sheet or full screen cover or things of that nature. It's very similar to that. So first we need a look around scene. So that is going to be a state property. So at state private var look around scene, and that is an MK look around scene, and is going to be optional because, you know, if we're not doing look around, we don't have a scene. And again, the UI here, we'll do it under map style. Say dot look around viewer, and you see is presented initial scene. Allows navigation, show road labels, points of interest. Those are all options, but it's just like a sheet, right? Is presented, just like is showing look around equals true. There you go, it's presented. And then the initial scene is the look around scene. So let's hit return there. And for is presented, I do need is showing look around. So that's another state variable at state private var is showing look around. Again, this is very similar to typical sheet here. So that is false to start. And then it's a binding $sign is showing look around. Now the initial scene is going to be look around scene that we have up here, which is MK look around scene. So what we need to do is fetch this look around scene and then flip is showing look around scene to true after we set that look around scene. So where we fetch it and see it, we're going to create a function here. Now, how you architect your app, whether you have a view model or you do these little functions right on the view, completely up to you. I'm not here again talking about architecture or how to refactor things. I'm going to spell it all out on the view so you can understand what's going on. Up to you how you want to refactor it. So let's say get look around scene from coordinate, and that coordinate is a CL location coordinate 2D, and we'll open and close curly brace. And because this is new in iOS 17, we are using Swift concurrency, and it does return not just the look around scene, bad autocomplete, MK look around scene, and it's optional because we might not get it. So let's do return try await MK look around scene request from a coordinate, So you're requesting the coordinate. So the coordinate we pass in is just going to be coordinate because we're passing that in. So you can see in the button tap here on Panama Park, we're going to say get look around scene for coordinate, and we're going to pass in .Panama Park. Same thing for Apple Visitor Center. So back down here, and then we'll say catch if this is a failure. We'll say print cannot retrieve look around. Of course, this is where you would show the user an alert, with the error localized description, however you want to handle the error. Oh, and I missed something. So it's MK look around scene request. So this is just the request, but you got to do request.scene. So the request has a scene on it. So we want to return the .scene. And I also need to return nil if this fails, right? If I do my do try catch, this fails, I'm returning nil. So therefore that is nil. So to review, get look around scene, we pass in a coordinate. We're going to return a look around scene if we can get one. So we do try catch. Let's try to get that look around scene from a look around scene request. And then that request has a scene. If that scene exists, go ahead and return that. If not, return nil and show an error. So let's go use this in our buttons. So open look around, we'll say task, because this is an async. So say task, look around scene equals get look around scene from, and then the coordinate is going to be .Apple Visitor Center, right? Because that's the button we're in. Make sure you have that lined up there. Oh, this needs to be await. Forgot about that. And then we're going to copy and paste this into the Panama Park one for the same reason. Look around scene equals get look around scene, not from Apple Visitor Center, from Panama Park. Now I can show you two different examples. So what we're going to do on this button tap is we're going to set the look around scene, but we're not triggering this is showing look around yet, which is going to show our sheet down here. So there's a couple different ways you can do like an on change modifier. I think it's simpler to just do it here in the task button, right? Because we're using await, right? So the line below this won't execute until this is done. So we can make sure we don't have nil, right? Because if look around scene is nil, don't do that. Guard, let look around scene, else just return, right? If it's nil, just do nothing. I mean, you could show an error, but we're already handling the error in our function. And then here you can do is showing look around equals true, because this is only going to execute if look around scene has a value. So let's copy and paste this button over here. I know I'm kind of repeating that, but I forgot to do the triggering the view here. Let's make sure we're not doing Apple Visitor Center, but Panama Park. Again, look around scene is showing true. Cool, let's run this on our simulator, see what we got. Okay, so if I hold on Apple Visitor Center, open look around, here's a look around sheet, boom, right in Apple Visitor Center. This view is so cool, and you can just walk around Apple Park if you want to. I know I'm Apple Visitor Center, but yeah, you can. Let's see the spaceship. Is that the spaceship right over there? No, that's not the spaceship. But anyway, yeah, you can just kind of walk around Apple if you like with this look around scene. Really cool stuff. Let's close this out and try Panama Park. What's Panama Park look like? Hold it, open look around. All right, cool, there's Panama Park. Neat. All right, walk around Apple. Cool. So let's stop that. That is look around view, and I'm getting this warning, like I don't need, so I can write this a different way. Since I'm not using look around scene as a variable, I can just say like guard look around scene not equal to nil. It's probably a little more readable. Copy and paste that, put that up here. Again, it doesn't really make much of a difference, but I want to shut up these Xcode warnings. Okay, that's look around scene. Let's talk about getting directions on the map. So to do that in all of our map items, right? Because our map items make up annotations, markers, we have our user annotation. So below this user annotation, I want to do a map polyline, and I want to do it from a route, because we're going to create this MKRoute based on directions from one coordinate to another coordinate. That's going to create a route, and then the polyline is going to paint that route onto our map. So do MK polyline from a route, and I don't have a route yet, so let's actually go up and create that up here. Again, it's a state variable, just like look around scene. So we can say at state private var, say route, and that is of type MKRoute. It's optional because we're not always going to have that. So back down to our polyline, we only want to show this polyline if we have a route. So I can say if let route, go ahead and do this polyline with the route, because if it's nil, I don't want to show the route. Now we do need to decorate this route, if you will. We've got the autocomplete there. So we want to add a stroke to it, not color blue. We'll do color.pink to keep with our theme here. Line width 4. I dialed in that line width to be what I like. We're not seeing a route yet because we need to create the route. We basically just put the UI here, say, hey, if we have a route, show the polyline of that route. So now, that's this route right here. So now we need to create that route and then set whatever route we have to this route, and then that will update the UI, and then we'll show the polyline if we have a route. So in our app, we're gonna give directions from the user's location, which in our previews case is Apple Park, to either Apple Visitor Center or Panama Park. So we need a coordinate for our user location, and then we already have the coordinate for Panama Park and Apple Visitor Center. Now, a little tricky because you would think with user annotation, oh, I have the user's coordinate, that should be easy to pull. It's not quite that easy. You gotta do a little extra work. So let's create a function for get user location. Say func get user location, and that is also async. and it returns a CL location coordinate 2D, but it's optional because we might not have the permissions, might not be able to get it for various number of reasons. We're going to use a new Swift concurrency version of getting live updates from the location. This is new as of iOS 17. So just like everything in this video, if you're supporting less than iOS 17, you basically can't use any of this. Just wanted to point that out. We say let updates equal CL location update dot live updates. So you can see tells core location to start delivering the location updates it produces for the configuration you specify. We're not going to mess with configuration. We're just going to get live updates. So basically it's like an async stream of location updates. So now that we have our stream of updates, we want to do let update equal try await. We actually got the autocomplete. Try await updates. And we're actually going to use first where, and then I'm actually going to use the closure because I think that looks cleaner. First where $0, and again, this is each item in the array, dot location dot coordinate is not equal to nil. So the first time we have a coordinate, give me that. That would be the user's immediate location. Again, in our app, we're not worried about keeping up with the user, but I mean, you could, based on this live update, you're getting a constant stream of locations. But for our purpose, we just want the location the moment they open their app, and then we'll do what we need to do. So that update that has a location.coordinate that's not nil, we want to return that. So we'll return update.location.coordinate. And then we just need to handle the error here. Catch, print, cannot get user location. And again, you probably want some better error handling here to let the user know like what's going on with their location. Oh, and I need to return nil in that case. Okay, so now that we have get user location, we have one part of our route, right? Because we need the user location and then we need our destination, which the destination is pretty simple, right? It's either going to be .Apple Visitor Center or .Panama Park. So now we need a function to create a route from those two locations. So let's write that. So below get user location, let's write func get directions to destination, and destination is a CL location coordinate 2D. So the first thing we want to do is make sure we have a good user location. Guard let user location equal await get user location, else return. Again, you could show an error here. We're just returning out of the function. Oh, this whole thing's going to need to be wrapped in a task because we are using Swift concurrency. So make sure we have a good user location. If we don't, we're just going to return blank. Again, you would show an error letting the user know what's up. And then now we create our request to create a route. So we'll say let request equal mkdirections.request. And then now we can start customizing this request a little bit. So say request.source. And you can see that is an MK map item. I'm going to ignore the autocomplete so I can explain it. So MK map item, and you can create these with a frame, code, or whatever, but place mark is what you typically create an MK map item with. So we'll do .init on the place mark. Now what does a place mark take? It takes a coordinate. So there you go, coordinate, and then we'll do the source is the user location. If you remember, get user location returns a CL location coordinate. So boom, we got that there. And then now request.destination, same thing, MK map item, from a place mark, and then the place mark will do .init on the place mark from a coordinate, and then here we will say destination. This is the coordinate we're passing in, right? We're gonna say get directions to .Apple Visitor Center, get directions to .Panama Park, and then that passes through there. So cool, we have our request, we have our source, we have our destination. There's a whole bunch of other things. So I'm gonna do request dot, you see description, arrival date, departure time, all this stuff, highway preference, toll preference, all this stuff you can do on your directions if you like. I'm gonna do transportation type because this is pretty applicable. As you can see, we can do dot automobile, transit, walking. I think bicycling is coming out in a lot of locations, but for now, we're gonna do walking just because we're walking around Apple Park. So obviously you're gonna get different directions if you're driving or walking, right? If you're on sidewalks or roads, that's gonna determine what kind of directions you get. So now that we've configured our request, we can do let directions equal try await MK directions request from the request. And then we need to .calculate. We need to calculate those directions. So if this try fails, well, we need to catch it. And then again, I'm just gonna do a print statement here, print show error. It's up to you how you wanna handle the error. But if we have good directions, now we need to set the route equals directions dot routes, because there's more than one route, right? When you open up Apple Maps and you try to go somewhere, it gives you multiple options, right? Based on traffic or different preferences, right? So we're just gonna take the first route, but again, you can go deeper. If you wanna show all the multiple routes, go through and pull out all the multiple routes and show them. But for us, we're gonna do routes.first. So what's gonna happen is when this route gets set up here, because it's a state property, it's going from nil to now it has a value, it's gonna recompute the body, and then, hey, if that route has a value now, so now we're gonna show the route polyline. So let's implement this in our buttons here. So for the get directions to dot Apple Visitor Center, and then down here in Panama Park, get directions to dot Panama Park when they tap get directions. Okay, got an extra space there. All right, let's see this in action. Run it on our simulator. Okay, there's our location up in some neighborhood up there. I'm sure that's somebody's house. So if I tap and hold on Apple Visitor Center, get directions, boom, there's the map polyline, directions to Apple Visitor Center. Let's go over to Panama Park. It's a little closer. Get directions, there you go, there's directions to Panama Park. And if you had more of them, right, you could keep doing this. Get directions, there's directions to Apple Visitor Center. So that is how you get a map polyline or directions on a map based on two different coordinates. So that was a lot to throw at you. This is gonna be a long video. But hopefully now you're familiar with the new way to do map stuff in iOS 17. And like I said, I didn't go down every rabbit hole, but hopefully this is enough to get you familiar, get you started, so now you can go build an awesome map app.